Men 101 again. Tony D'Amico, Derek Freddy, and sitting in for Nick Bass is Justin Finney. Welcome to the panel, Justin.
Thanks, Al. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, buddy. Justin's also a good friend of mine. A little information about Justin. He's actually right now a film producer, working with David E. Flake, and they're working on a superhero movie franchise. Justin in the past has been a head coach for the swimming consultant of the Brazilian women's national water polo team. He also helped coach the Canadian women's senior water polo team, 2008-2012, winning silver medals for both World Championships in 2009 and the Pan Am Games. Former head coach of Wolverine and University of Michigan as well.
Correct, yes.
Nice record, Justin.
Well, thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Oh, my God, it's great to have you here.
Sounds slick.
Derek always has something cool to say. Like,
Right on, yeah.
Great topic today, guys. Like, as always, we have like a lot of hot topics here. It's sexual harassment, whether it be at home or the work environment, stuff like that.
Right.
And our guest today for that is George Fiala. So we'll be speaking to him a little bit later. And yeah, so
Alan, you know, Sunday was the anniversary, 15th year of 9/11. So
Right.
maybe we want to wish everybody our condolences for they lost their loved ones over there, and it's been 15 years already. Time flew by.
yeah, we're all thinking of you guys down there in the U.S. We the North. Yeah, we got you, right?
That's right.
Okay, cool. So we're going to get on to our topic, sexual harassment, whether the workplace, the home, the environment. And I have exactly the definition of harassment. Sexual harassment is harassment in a workplace or other professional or social situation involving the making of unwanted sexual advances or obscene remarks. Anybody gone through that, or anybody? Derek always Derek busts out laughing. You know,
He's got
Derek's been
something
up
good
to
when
something.
when he laughs.
No, I've had some experiences. Though I feel like we all have, and I think that I feel like it's a very individual basis as to what your comfort level is as well. But I also think that there are things that are very common sense. You don't walk around like feeling someone up in the workplace. It's just not. There's certain comments you don't make. There are certain comments you don't make. You know what I mean? So
It seems that, from my understanding, it seems that women take it a much more serious problem than men do. And not too long ago, a friend of mine had happened to come in to meet her in a place, and I touched the small of her back, and she said, well, I don't like to be touched there. I said, oh, no problem. I just said hi, see how you doing, And then later on, we're talking throughout the evening, chatting, and she put her hand on my shoulder and touched my chest. I go, I'd rather you don't do that. She says, well, men like that. Oh, we do we? But you just told me not to touch you, so I'm telling you not to touch me.
Right.
So, but women have a different understanding that, well, it's okay because that's what we want. Now, maybe in the LGBT community, it's different than that.
well.
Oh, see, I love Derek when he goes, well. Okay.
Well, there's a lot of, yeah. Well, I would say we're probably a little bit more comfortable with touchy-feeliness, perhaps. That said, I understand where she was coming from, because the small of the back is a very intimate spot. It's actually a very
And you're
intimate
telling me my chest isn't?
No, actually, it may be a little bit less intimate to the feeling of someone actually taking their hand and cupping the small of your back. I don't know if you've ever had anyone do that to you. If you've ever had a man.
I do it a lot when I want to, and in the crowd, I'll actually, I'll say, excuse me to pass them by.
Yeah.
Instead of push their hand or the shoulder. So it's like, I'm just trying to get by or whatever.
See,
it's men or women, it makes no difference to me. So, but what had happened was that had happened, and then she later on, then she put her hand on my chest, shoulder, chest, and I said, well, I'm uncomfortable with you doing that because this is my body and this is my space at the same time. Sure. But I wasn't really uncomfortable. I was just saying, just to tell her, well, you have to understand at the same time, men don't say a lot of things, even if they're uncomfortable or not. Like I'm sure if you were working in, let's say we'll use a law firm, for example, a high-powered woman working in a law firm, and a young intern come in and she's rubbing his shoulder or something like that, that's sexual harassment on the male. Mm-hmm. Is it, or you think it's not?
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in. Do you find that there's a difference in terms, well, obviously there's a difference between men and women when it comes to sexual harassment, what's acceptable, what isn't, that's been documented over the years. Would you find that there are certain places that you can touch that you shouldn't touch in relation between men and women, or is it a personal thing?
But it all depends on how.
Is it who accepts more? Like, what would be the boundaries? I guess would be my question
Yeah,
on
but
what would be acceptable and what would be unacceptable.
So what you well, like they.
But boundaries are different for every single.
Correct.
I would call it a couple, even though it's a friendship, whatever.
So
you know.
okay.
Yeah.
It's different. So I mean, you know, if you're close to that person and you do the hold them by the back just to push them away or something, I bet you it won't bother them. But if it's somebody that you don't know too well or you met them for the first time, I'd say, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
And sometimes people are in bad moods, you know, and that comes into effect.
So what
And they're
happens
like,
if
I
you're
don't
in-
want to feel like getting touched there today, but yesterday was okay.
Right.
So there you go. So what happens if you get to that point where that's going on and you're friends and you know everything's cool, and then all of a sudden they decide you have a fallout.
Right.
Now you do something and say, "Don't touch me like that anymore. That's sexual harassment." And you look at the person and you go, "Well, that's not what I was trying to do."
Well, that's a different story. That's coming from that's coming from a place of malice. That's not coming from, I feel violated. That's just, I'm bitter from what happened before. I think that there's a double standard when it comes to sexual harassment that we're not saying at the table. There's a full double standard when it comes to men and women. I think that it's more acceptable to touch a guy and be like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Whereas when it comes to a male touching a female in the workplace, it's very, it's met with trepidation. So it's a little bit like, ooh, can I touch her on the shoulder? Or should I say hi? Should I say she looks nice in that dress? Can I say that? Or is it going to be taken out of context? I think that it's received differently between
So
the individual,
Yeah.
and I think that there's a little bit of a different reception between the sexes. I do.
I agree with him.
There's also a question of signals. I mean, in the workplace, you can develop relationships with people. I mean, obviously, and what you may be comfortable with one person, you may not be as another person may not be as comfortable with you touching them in that way or talking to them in that way, or hey, you know, you look great in that dress today, or whatnot, or hey, you look great in those pants. You know.
well,
what I mean?
what about the sporting environment for, let's say? That's another completely different environment where, you know, coaches are, you know, slapping them
Players
on the
slap each other in the butt, you know,
butt, or
football,
coaches.
baseball.
That's a different world. Like, I grew up in the world of ballet, and it's not a locker room, though it's very touchy-feely, and we are all over each other on a regular basis, and it's never really deemed as sexual, same as in the sporting world. So it's culture.
But it depends
right?
on that person.
Depends on, yeah.
It also depends too. I think it just hit me that maybe it depends if anything ever happened to you when you were a young man.
Sure.
You might have been sexually abused, and then all of a
Sure.
sudden these feelings or touches from
Sure.
other men or women might actually might turn you off. Anyway, you know what we'll do? We'll come back after the break with George Fiala. Great topic, guys. See you after the break. And we're back with George Fiala. Nice to have you on the show, George. Thanks, so, George, IT consultant, 20 years, president and CEO of Brainwerk Group, Inc. Lived in the GTA and Mississauga. Very nice degree in psychology.
Yes.
You can talk to Justin. You know, they say psychology doesn't work in Irish people, by the way. Loves exercising, boxing, PX nanny, and hardcore videos for working out. Great. And, George, you're hoping to get into the ring.
Again, yeah.
Again.
Well, I was certified last year, but I'm in the senior category, and there's only 8 guys.
Boxing or
Boxing.
boxing?
Boxing,
Wow.
yeah. And
Wow.
there's only 8 guys in that category.
Good for you.
And the unfortunate reality is we couldn't book a fight for me.
What weight division are you in?
There's no, in the Masters senior class, there's no weight
Because
division.
I know Justin's laughing. He knows where I'm going with this right now.
Yeah.
So we can set it up. I used to box for a long time.
But,
So we can
there's no weight class. 35 and up, there's no weight class.
Oh, wow.
Right.
So you can just stick here with heavyweights? Or
Pretty much, yeah.
My goodness.
Wow.
But
I got some fun doing that.
I couldn't find a
But you're
fight.
tired, so that's good.
Great to have you here, George. Great to have you. So you know the topic is sexual harassment. So you can give us help us out what you think what we should understand as men in the workplace, and is there signs of it? Is there things that we don't see in the normal day-to-day thing?
Well, honestly, what you guys talked about was right. It's a spectrum, right? What is acceptable? What do you accept when I touch you, you touch me? What's acceptable? You talked about it with the woman that you were talking about.
Right.
Right. What's acceptable to you wasn't acceptable to her.
Right.
But you just kind of made a point. And that works across the board. I mean, a similar situation happened to me where I was working at this organization, and it was a very warm day, and I decided I was going to wear a t-shirt because I wasn't going anywhere for meetings or anything. I was just working out of the office. And all of a sudden people just started coming up to me and saying, oh, can I feel your arms? Can I do this? And people just coming up to me within the business. I said, okay, it didn't bother me, right? And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, that may be misconstrued as sexual harassment by some people. I just didn't see it that way, but that could be easily misconstrued.
Brandon, would you think then, like, would an employer look at you that you're actually
inviting it?
Right.
In my case, it could very well be, but I didn't see it that way. It was just really hot that day. It was one of those really squelching August days, and I just did not feel like wearing a shirt. Just wanted to be comfortable.
And that was it.
And that was it. Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry. What I want to know is what exactly defines sexual harassment in the workplace. Is there a definition?
That's what I want to know too.
Well, technically speaking, there probably is a definition within the work environment, and you talked about it. The language you use, the way you talk to somebody, the way you touch somebody, the way you interact with somebody, and there are people that will take it a little bit more seriously. Like some people will be very, very concerned about how you interact with them, and they will want everything to be very proper, very prim, and you're going to be having to say everything in a very specific manner. And if you deviate from that, that will be considered harassment, whether it's sexual or not.
But I think that's pretty normal. I mean, you know, when you start working with somebody, and you know, you get to learn who they are and stuff. You know, and then you start joking, and you know, sometimes you'll throw in a bit of a, listen, we're guys, dirty joke, just to laugh, nothing sexually, and you see what the reaction is. So if they come back with one, or they're joking also, then you're like, okay, you know, they're a bit more easygoing. I'm not trying to do anything more than you know than what it is. It's just a joke. Right. Sometimes you see the reaction, and you see that they're taking it hard. You're like, okay, can't go there. You're feeling them off, you know. You're trying to see.
Right. So, like we're talking about, it's sexual harassment towards men. That's because it's the men's show, right? So I just realized, I mean, Tony was talking about that there. We as men actually have to understand what sexual harassment is and stop sexually harassing our counterparts, right? Like we as men sometimes take advantage of what we do, right? And we have to stop that because we're giving other men a bad name. So like it came to my attention there. What was the guy from CBC? His name was in a lot of trouble there.
Gian Gomeshi.
Gian Gomeshi, right? And we're not talking about his first thing, but the second problem that he had was a sexual harassment problem.
Yep.
Now you're in the spotlight, and you're like us, like anybody here. We could be doing the same thing. You're in the spotlight, and you're now harassing women. We have to teach men that this cannot happen. As much as we are talking about the men being sexual, we have to also educate our fellow men that you cannot be going out there and doing stuff like that. Putting yourself in an environment and causing a problem.
Yeah, but what are you doing exactly? If you're just talking to them and you're joking and then they take offense to your joke, that's fine.
Yeah, but
you stop. You don't continue.
I also think there's a fine. Like, we understand. I mean, as men, we understand what is sexual harassment and what isn't. We know what that line is and when not to cross it.
Right.
I think what you said before, you know, feeling out the situation, is maybe something that should not be happening, perhaps, in the workplace.
But why do you need to feel out the situation?
Well, in order, when you're developing a relationship with somebody in the workplace, you know, there's always that office politics type thing where you have cliques within the workplace that form, and you know, a lot of people tend to want to feel like they're able to confide in someone in the workplace and feel a little closer. Usually, you know, women stick with women, men stick with men, and sometimes men and women mix, and maybe sometimes there's a line that's crossed when you're trying to feel out, you know, a personal relationship with that person. Maybe we as men didn't see it that way, but we did cross that line.
But the question is, where's the line?
Right.
Exactly.
That's the question.
Line is different.
It's so individual, I
exactly
find.
it, because
Absolutely.
what is a line to you is not necessarily a line to me, or what's a line to the woman you're speaking to may not necessarily be a line to you.
Okay, so let's say, what's the line for a coach when coaching young men or women? What's the line there? There is no line. You should not be touching
There's a line you don't touch. That's the line.
But like, I have to interject with that because I grew up as a ballet dancer. I grew up actually in industries. I grew up in the entertainment industry and as a ballet dancer, and I've been felt out my whole life, literally. But it was in a very different sense. I think I would have known, not I think, I'm a very assertive person, and I know that individually I would know if I'm being sexually harassed or if I felt uncomfortable, but I'm from these worlds where it was necessary for my teacher to grab my glute. Yeah, absolutely. And be like, no, push it and like this and and that's
But that's ballet, so you know your coach, you know you're in a situation.
But I think it's very necessary also in sports. Like you sometimes need to actually physically coach.
Okay, so ballet, that's part of.
But the same thing's in martial arts.
Okay, so what about football and hockey? There's no call to be slapping or touching somebody.
What about swimming? I've been in it my whole life. I was, as a former national champion to coach in Canada, and there's a line you don't cross. I've coached 8 and under kids all the way through Olympians and worked with international teams, and I know the line not to cross. I know what not to say. I know how to protect my athlete. And
you know what, Justin? What always happens to Derek? I cut him off. We'll be right back after the break. Derek, get a break this time.
I did.
I'm back again, as always. We're off camera here. We get into these discussions. So we're just talking there. There are men out there that don't even know there is a line. How do we get these guys to understand there's a line that you do not touch whatsoever?
Cattle prods.
Cattle.
Yeah, pretty much.
Literally, yeah.
So, like as you were saying, Justin, you were coaching back. Like you've coached a lot from the youth right up to the Olympia level.
We're fortunate in Canada with the National Coaches Certification Program that runs all coaches basically across Canada, and teaches them systematically what's right and what's wrong, along with the moral of the sport and the technical part of the sports, or whichever sport you may be involved in. Swimming in Canada does a great job of policing their coaches and making sure that we're doing the right things and not crossing that line, and they take it very seriously if that line is crossed. And the same thing I know goes with, as I was a coach in the United States, they do the same thing, and I'll talk specifically for swimming. The United States Swimming Association does the same thing, so USA Swimming. So I think we know what that line is, and I think men, personally speaking for myself, know where the line is drawn, and I think we choose to cross it. Personally,
Right,
I really think that's what it is.
So
I agree.
So should we not have a formal class to teach men? When you're in the workplace or whatever environment, there's certain lines you should not go. Is there certain things you shouldn't say, certain things you shouldn't do? Should we not, like we always go back to the advocacy of men, there's nothing for men. Maybe this is also it's a cultural thing too.
Right. Yep.
Right? It just dawned on me. I have friends from all different backgrounds, and certain backgrounds, they have no problem grabbing a hold of a woman. That's right there. Like it's sexual harassment, sexual abuse, whatever, physical abuse. None whatsoever. So, do we have to get a course like that would be good to teach all cultures, like what you can and cannot do when it comes to a woman?
Well, part of that I think is, it's valid to a certain extent, but some of it is also a little bit of overkill, because you've got, then that comes into play. Where do you stop that?
Right.
Okay, there are certain things. Certain organizations will have courses internally about harassment, sexual harassment, and that sort of thing. As a rule across organizations, no, that doesn't work, because some organizations are too small for that. Some organizations, after a certain size, require it by law. Other organizations will say, you know what, we'll figure this out as we go. From a cultural perspective, that's where it becomes a little dicey. As you said, there are certain cultures where that kind of behavior is okay. In point of fact, if you're not doing that within that culture, it's almost weird. Right. However, when you bring it to another culture, i.e. coming to Canada,
right,
that's where it becomes a real problem. And then the question becomes, do we do this on a culture by culture basis to teach them these things? In other words, do we bring out a certain culture and say, you guys have a problem with this and we need to teach you not to do this?
Well, you can't, it's not that you can't do it, you just can't do it here.
Well, this is what I'm saying.
Right.
This is what I'm saying. So the question then says, where do you begin and where do you stop? And do we do it across the board? And then does it become a culture of censorship? And does it become a culture of self-censorship at that point? And that's because then everything that you do and everything that you say, you begin to question.
Do you think that we're already in that culture of censorship?
To a point.
Sorry to...
To a point.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think we are.
Yeah.
Because I think that as, you know, and this is part of the problem that we in this culture view certain things as being okay because that's what the parents did, that's what the grandparents did,
Right.
that sort of thing. And it's brought forward. The reality is it's not okay, and it hasn't been okay for a while, just nobody said anything about it. And as a result of that, now we're going the other way. We're self-censoring ourselves
Right.
with how we can interact with people, what we can say, what we can do, and that sort of thing. And then there are other individuals that say, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to do it anyway. And if I get my hand slapped, I get my hand slapped. I turn around and I say, okay, that's too far.
But don't you learn stuff like that at home? Doesn't your
Yeah,
family,
I was going to say that.
In an
Like-
ideal world, yes.
you know?
But
I mean,
all homes are different.
Yeah.
I understand that, but it's part of learning manners and being respectful, and you know, like you grow up with that, like
Right.
you know. And I mean, my other point is, what happens if the woman starts it, and she steps just a bit on that other line, just to see how you're going to be. So then you're going to do a bit, and then all of a sudden they'll get offended, and then you look like the bad guy, and you're the one who. So you know what I mean?
Well, we always don't have, as men, I feel we don't have the upper hand either way in terms of we're harassed. I think that it's the way, as much as we need to self-police ourselves in terms of not harassing women, when we get harassed in return, I feel that we have to also self-police ourselves on how we're going to react to that. You know what I'm saying? In order for for whatever repercussions that could come back on us, because if a woman were to turn that around, hypothetically speaking, of course, and say, hey, you know, actually it was you that did something, or lie, or whatever the case may be, hypothetical, how do you police yourself out of that when you did nothing wrong to begin with? So I find that we're, as males, we have as men, we have the wherewithal to not cross that line, and as well, we have to police ourselves when the line is crossed on our part.
I almost jumped because
And here we go.
because it feels like I don't go through this, and it is a double standard being a gay guy, because I have felt up all of my girlfriends. I just have. Gay guys have carte blanche often to just go and grab, compare sizes, like of.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, we do that. And so there's kind of a double standard. So that said, I can't imagine what goes through your heads when you're in this situation. You can't even, I've seen guys who get nervous saying to a girl that she's just attractive because they're afraid of
Yeah,
what
but you
the
don't know how they're
repercussions,
gonna react
and that's exactly what I'm
sometimes.
saying. Whereas in
Or-
my world,
You get away with everything.
well, it's not even just that. It's like, I've never heard of, I'm trying to think of a situation where I've heard of a gay man being offended by another man saying something sexual or touching them.
But what
in
about
that.
your girlfriends? What about a heterosexual woman that would be? They've never got offended either. Why? Because of you being gay, and they just.
Generally, yeah, and sometimes it's like a fantasy for them. They feel non-threatened because
Right. Do
yeah,
you find it's a threat perception, perhaps?
a little bit, yeah, I really do, because they're like, oh, well, he's not interested in me like that, so it's like totally fine, and I can flirt with him, and it's safe, like you know what I mean. So it's a little bit. It's
No,
it's
we
a
really
different
don't know what you
psychology.
mean. Like Derek is living in a world that you all guys would probably want to live in.
Well,
but-
yes,
You
absolutely.
said the feeling part, and I'm going, well, what are
Okay, you know
talking
what? We'll be right back after break with our internet questions. Hashtag men10111. We'll see you in a bit. And we're back. So, yeah, we're having a good discussion again. What were you saying there, Derek, about what?
About which?
About who?
Which one?
Okay, so this is our internet discussion. So I have a question from Michael all the way out in California. How does sexual abuse happen in marriage?
All right, this is...
It's you know what, in my case, it was a little bit strange. It wasn't really sexual abuse per se. It was more physical and verbal abuse. And I would think that by extension there could have been, you can extend that to sexual abuse. But and I will preface this by saying that in every instance she was doing it under the influence of alcohol. She was an addict.
Okay.
And when she's not drinking, she's a very nice person. When she's under the influence, it's a Jekyll and Hyde scenario, right? She's physically abusive, verbally abusive, came at me with a knife, tried to cut herself, as a matter of fact, and call 911 saying it was me that did it.
Right.
Anyway, but the point is that if you take that one step further, all of that was unwanted, unwelcome on my part. So if you want to say sexual abuse in a marriage of a man, same as sexual abuse of a woman. It's unwanted attention by one party to another. And that, in a nutshell, is it. That's abuse. And if, as an example, let's use that as an example. I mean, she's been under the influence. She's verbally and physically abused me, and now, she wants to have makeup sex. Right, that's going to happen. I'm not in the mood for it.
Right.
And then you might actually get charged after that. If she wasn't in the right frame of mind again, the next thing, how do you get her?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you get her
exactly.
that one?
Well, as a matter of fact, I mean, she did call the police on me one time, blaming me for the damage she had done to herself. And finally, when she sobered up in the morning, she admitted to the police that, in point of fact, it was all made up.
Wow.
I did nothing. But at the end of the day, I was the one who had to also then not go home for 3 days.
So
I had to find a place to live.
Wow, because we had this topic. What was the topic we had like last week? We talked about domestic violence, and one question was we actually wanted to know what would happen if you call the officers and charge your partner with domestic violence. Would the police take the man's side if he didn't do anything wrong? And you're saying
well, in this particular instance, it was a little bit different because she was the one that called, not me, right? And she was the one that did damage to herself, and accused me of doing it. So I looked guilty right from the get-go, and I realized, regardless of what I was going to say,
They're going to take
her side. I mean, it's one of those scenarios where I can say I didn't do it, but who are they going to believe?
Right.
So, this is the thing. So the guy always has to leave the residence.
Yes.
Why if the guy hasn't caused a problem? Why does the guy why does he have to leave the residence if he's the one that like the woman's causing? Why does she not have to leave?
Here's a question I had. That's a great question, and to elaborate on that, what was the outcome of what happened between you and your wife? I would imagine with the police. Did they? When you left, did they arrest you? Were you?
I was arrested.
Okay, and then they obviously they let you out because you're here, and so basically they. I'm
hiding the bracelet right now.
Okay, right. But were you charged with anything after she said no? I was the one.
No, she called. No. She said it was all.
Actually, no, she didn't call. They had her in the police station. They had her in one of the interrogation rooms because they realized she was drunk.
So then they turned it around.
Yeah, but when they got there, they didn't see she was drunk?
They saw she was drunk right away.
Right.
But they arrested you no matter
But
what.
the problem is that she was the one that called 911. She was the one that put the charge forward.
They have to take those precautions.
And they have to do that.
Yeah, but there's times when men make phone calls at 911 and they put the charge forward and they get looked at.
Right.
Right. This is
But I mean, look at it in this instance. I weighed approximately 95 kilos. Right. I have black belts, boxing, a whole bunch of other things. She weighs a grand total of maybe 40, 45 kilos soaking wet. And she's all of 5 foot nothing.
Wow.
Right?
You know.
Who are you going to believe?
Yeah, but you never judge a book by its cover, right?
That's
Right.
true.
No,
No,
but
it's
in
true.
that instance, I understand where the police officers have to take action. They have to diffuse the situation and find the best route to that diffusion.
Okay, so bring a breathalyzer and do both tests.
But it's all about
right away.
But it doesn't matter because realistically, it doesn't matter for one really simple reason. Police were called. They have to take precautions at that point.
And they automatically take the
Regardless.
man.
They take the side of the person who calls, I believe.
Yeah.
That's more, yeah. So
if you would've called,
in
She
California,
called.
No, if you called, she would've left?
If I had called, there is a good chance that she would have been the one arrested, and that she would still be under arrest the next morning when I left and went home.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
However, I didn't do that. Now, that being said, a scenario happened later on under similar circumstances where she called the cops again on me, 911, but this time she forgot to hang up the phone.
right? So it's all recorded.
And because she forgot to hang up the phone, she said, all right, this time you're going to get it. I've done this to myself. It's going to look like you did it,
Wow.
and there's nothing you can do about it.
just by the grace of God, she didn't hang up the phone, right?
And she didn't
But
hang up the phone. They heard it all.
Count yourself lucky too that that's the law in Ontario, because in California, where I live half the time, the law is that if someone's called for a domestic, whether it's the man or the woman, they arrest the person who was called on, regardless of I was drunk, I'm on pills, I'm crazy, whatever the case may be, and they arrest the person that was called upon, and then the judge sorts it out. The cops just say, okay, and let the judge sort this out, and it goes in front of a judge. So we're lucky that at least there's some laws. That law kind of, it's a balance where the police get to have more autonomy over what happens to.
Barbara from Winnipeg wants to know, she had an intimate relationship with her coworker, then she broke it off, and he's still harassing her. Can she file for sexual harassment at work?
I would think that would be, if he's harassing her, in what sense, though? That's the question.
Well,
Is
they
he
work
harassing her-
together, they had
No,
intimate
but my
sex?
question is he harassing her from on a physical level?
I guess,
Is he
to
calling her-
still have intimate
then,
fun.
Right. Then in that case, if he doesn't take the hint, she can file a sexual harassment suit on that, but she may also have to do what's called, I think here, a personal protection bond or peace bond.
That's what Gameshi has.
Yeah.
He got a
Right.
peace
Yeah.
bond for that. That's what that was
he
for his
did?
sexual harassment stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In the
that's
U.S.,
right.
it's
He
called a
took a-
temporary restraining order.
Right.
So that may be the route she'd have to
Okay.
go.
I have a question here from Wendy in Lachine, Quebec, and it says, "What advice do you have for students who might be getting sexually harassed in the classroom? What's the best action to take?"
Question is it the teacher or the other students?
What if it's the teacher?
If it's the teacher, then it's same
Okay, so
idea.
we're going to go back to that question right after the break. And we're back again. So you were saying there, Justin,
Again, from Wendy in Lachine, Quebec, she asked, "What advice do you have for students who might be getting sexually harassed in the classroom? What's the best action to take?" George asked, teacher or student? I said teacher, but I'm going to switch it. I'm going to say, what if it's a student?
Well, if it's a student,
What if it's a high school classroom
right?
students?
If it's a student, it's like a peer scenario in a business environment.
Right.
Right. It again, the question becomes, and I know how this is going to sound, but the bottom line is that's one of the questions that's going to be asked, especially in high school, because everybody, whether you're male or female, is coming into their own sexuality, right? They're testing the boundaries of their sexuality themselves within the classroom and within that environment. So the question becomes, how much of it is brought on unwittingly, and how much of it is the guy doing unwittingly? Like, does he understand the boundary? And from her end, does she understand the boundary, or is it simply because she doesn't like this person and he's being more pushy, so to speak?
So like sexual harassment and that level is, and especially in these high school students right now, men and women, like text messages and pictures and stuff like that,
Yeah.
that would be considered sexual harassment, right? So
It could be. Yeah.
But there was actually a
Sexting, that's what you're
situation.
saying.
Sexting's a
A
huge
situation
thing, yes.
happened a month ago in a college, and
Oh, yes, right.
in John Abbott College.
Right.
And what happened was the girl was with this guy from the same school, same grade. They were actually going out, and something happened, and they argued a bit, then they made up, and they were really getting hot and heavy in the school. And I mean, they had sex there, right, in the school. And then she filed for sexual harassment.
Right.
And she went all over the news, radio, saying he harassed, sexually, physically violated.
He's
me
actually
and
a
stuff.
football player or something at the school,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And he ended up leaving the school.
Yes, and he left the school and everything, but they never charged him because they had on video that she was not fighting him off. She was actually going for it. But something happened where they ended up arguing again after, and she just said
Flip the script.
Right,
exactly. But because it was on camera and they had the video, the police officers never went to that student's house and arrest them for it. So she freaked out. She's still going on the radio, trying to get on the radio, on the newspapers and everything. And he left that school because I'm sorry, but you look.
It sticks with
Yeah.
you.
Listen, sexual harassment on a man,
It's not. Yeah.
you're in trouble no matter what
these are
you do,
18
you're
and
in trouble.
20-year-olds, you know?
Sexual harassment for a woman is completely different. There was a case in, I believe, in the United States in Ohio where a teacher was taking advantage of several students.
Yes.
And I think the boys were between 16 and 17.
Yeah.
And they eventually complained, and she was taken to court, and she was said that she got found guilty, whatever it was, and said that so the charge she said that the boys were getting less attention at home, so she was giving them attention that she needed. Now, if that had been a man with a 14 or 16 or 17-year-old girl, he would have been nailed to the wall, called a pedophile, completely, and this woman didn't even get sent to jail. Men would be put in prison or sent to either a psychiatric
Did she
place for
lose her job?
evaluation. No, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, but the standards are completely different.
Right.
It depends. I feel like there was that. I love that it's one case, but actually there have been several where it was flipped, and it was a female teacher, and Mary Kay.
There was one by yes.
Letourneau.
Mary
Right.
Kay Letourneau, yeah.
That was a huge one, although they're actually
Together.
married and happily ever after now. But there's also, I find there's a double standard with that too, because it's almost seen as those 16 and 17-year-old boys are patting themselves on the backs, and they're like, yeah, you got her, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And it's a different
But in
culturing.
the court of the law, if that was a man, and we all know here, that was a man, he would not be getting off or getting a slap on the wrist.
No.
He would be charged with underage sexual harassment, sex, and then
Sex offenders
sex
list.
offenders
the
list,
whole thing.
and then the whole thing. Now, this woman is not on a sex offenders list. This woman is not being charged and has gone to prison. Is not called a pedophile. So the standards and everything is completely different when it comes to no. And I'm not knocking. I'm not saying she's a bad person or anything. But if you're going to look at it, we are still considered the men, and we have to put up with stuff.
Okay, so that said, I have a quick question.
Right.
The men do get sexually harassed. I feel like we're cultured to take it.
Yes.
What is the ratio in terms of females reporting sexual harassment compared to men reporting sexual harassment? Because contrary to what I said before, there are situations where a man is actually being, it's happened to me before, where it actually is not pleasant and it's very scary. And so what is...
It's honestly, it's men reporting these kinds of things. It's down to like 14%,
Yeah.
if even.
I checked on Google today. I did my claims and stuff, and it was 12% men, 43% women.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, women are going to be taken more seriously for sure.
absolutely.
Well, but again, and you've said it time and again here, the double standard, right? But realistically, in society, the double standard exists for everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And by and large,
It's a good point.
by and large, part of the problem is that from the double standard perspective, let's face it, we as guys have gotten away with a lot.
Agreed.
Yeah, but not
because-
anymore. It's
No, no,
changed
no,
now.
I-
Now we
this-
get
this
the
is what
short
I'm-
end of the stick on everything.
This is what I'm saying, right? In the past,
Yeah.
guys have gotten away with a whole bunch of things, but now the double standard has kind of done a flip
Big time.
in that sense, where now men are being held more accountable for their actions. But the converse effect of that is that women are being held less accountable for their actions.
I just want to add one thing before we go to break, or elaborate a little bit more. I mean, I think that parents have a way tougher job, going back to this classroom question, in policing their kids, especially with, you know, the cell phone, or with technology that's out there today, and at their disposal, at their fingertips. I'm sure you've dealt with this as well. And it's also a major responsibility. If you're going to have kids, you have to police your kid. If you're parents, you're going to have kids, you have to police your kids. You have to stay on top of them. You have to, if you're going to buy them a phone, you have to be responsible for what happens with that phone. When you're talking about sexting, when you're talking about, you know, explicit pictures on Snapchat and whatnot, it's a, you know, it's a whole different ball game rather that we grew up with. We didn't grow up with that back.
But you can work around
kids.
that.
Right, but think about this: if you had a cell phone, or if cell phones were around when you were a kid, how much trouble would you be in?
Yeah, well, it's true.
You know,
I mean,
seriously.
Okay, guys, so listen, we got to go back to break, but I'd like to thank George Fiala for coming on today, and our musical guest is Lazz Da Kid. It was awesome. Thanks, George. Great.
Thank you very much, guys.
We'll see you after the break. Okay,
right.
so. We're back here with our young performer, Lazz Da Kid. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, good. So listen, 18, Toronto boy, rapper, singer, songwriter. Just got into music and stuff recently, is that correct?
Yeah, just about a year ago, actually, to be honest.
What happened, or how did that come about?
Just basically, I was going through a lot of stuff in my life, and I needed an outlet for certain things. I used to play sports, I used to like dance a little bit, and I used to sing in church. But mostly when I was going through all these things, I needed to find like an outlet, so I started writing poetry, and it generated into like songwriting and rap. So I took that a little bit further when I got the chance to get into the studio.
Wow, what type of sports?
Mostly basketball and football.
Cool.
Nice. Running back?
No, corner.
Corner, yeah.
Corner, that's where it's at.
Corner?
Don't know nothing about that football boy.
I was
I'm
just gonna
an
say,
Irish boy. We play soccer and
Guard the
football.
receivers and
That's
everything.
it. Yeah,
Right,
you guards
okay.
the receivers.
I still don't even know what a receiver is.
A receiver is a guy who catches the ball from the quarterback. That's a receiver. Then you throw it to him. And
Seriously, Derek? Like, I'm from Derek. I was born in Ireland, and you don't know what a wide
I
receiver is.
don't. I have no idea. I have no idea.
So how's it going for you so far?
It's actually going really, really great. I'm learning new things. I'm learning on the production side, the planning and events, promotions. Like I'm taking like a dabble in every piece of like the music industry. So videography, production, promotions, even recording and mixing and engineering and everything.
Yeah, it's good that you're doing that, because you're like, in case you have anything you need to fall back on, but you learn the ins and outs of the industry, you know.
Exactly.
It seems like a quick leap from sports to artistry, because really what you're doing is really working art, which is lovely. What was the huge prompt for you, and are there huge musical influences that you have?
Pretty much like before what I said, the prompt was just like I needed the outlet, right?
Right.
I mean, when I got onto the court for basketball or onto the field for football, it was an outlet for me. But then again, at the same time, it wasn't, because I was more taking out my problems on other people per se, right?
Right.
But this way, it was an outlet for me to like let people know what I'm going through my music, right? So they can like kind of bond with me in a way. Musical influences, I don't normally people come in or like they're talking about their musical influences, and they'll like go back into the day, but I haven't really like dabbled into music so far back. But coming up now, I listen to like a lot of Kanye, Travis Scott. I get inspired by lots of local artists who've made it out big. Like one of my friends that I went to high school with, J Soul, just got signed to Cash Money Records.
Nice.
My boy Claremont's going on tour with Sunreal. Like it's like there's a lot of like local talent that really influences me. John River too, for example. So yeah.
Awesome.
Do you write your own music?
Yeah, everything that I.
Including beats as well, or do you work with a DJ on your beats?
Oh no, yeah, I work with a producer for all my beats. Like
Nice.
I've only worked like one beat that I've made so far. I co-produced with one of my producers, and that was on my like single that I just released called Summertime.
Yeah.
But for all the rest, all my producer makes, but the writing I do that myself.
Oh, right on. That's awesome.
That's
really
great. I mean,
good,
like the youth, like you guys, we're a little older than you, that is, and it's nice to see that you guys at a young age find a way to express yourself. I know it's probably a lot of stuff built up inside and this and that, and you're finding the right. That's a great outlet to have. But and also, like, again, learning the whole side of the production. Everything. It's a great thing to do. People sit back and think, oh, I'm going to become a superstar as a musician or an actor, and they don't bother dibbling and dabbling in what's the outside of it, the production, the videography, the writing. You need to find out what it's like to be an artist. Learn all that there. That's awesome. That's an awesome thing to be doing.
The initiative, it's really commendable.
Right.
You're an inspiration to the young men and women out there today.
Thank
you
you.
know, for sure, man. So
I
you know.
appreciate that.
What's your favorite aspect of all that, like production, writing? What do you have a favorite aspect?
It's really just the creation of like when I get the beat, like I always like go home and I listen to the beat and just creating and like putting down lyrics and like going through like you think this sounds good, then you listen back to it and you're like, oh, maybe I can improve a little bit more. I just love that part because then when you finally get the finished product and you know it's your best product, like you feel good about it, right? Because you know you're like, oh my god,
So you like to
created
create
that.
more than singing?
Yeah, I like the creative process because that's where all like your passion really goes into. I mean, you do perform with passion and everything, but from the jump, you're passionate about what you put down on paper, right?
So your lyrics, let's say, where do you get them from?
Pretty much life experiences.
There you go.
Like everything that I've been through or everything that I'm currently going through, I put it into my music.
Okay,
and even sometimes where it might not be something I'm going through, it's just a song that I need like to make me happy, right?
Speaking of songs, what's the song today you're gonna sing?
Oh, the song today I'm gonna do is called The Wife's Interlude. It's the interlude to my EP that I have coming out.
That's right, your EP coming out, Depression to Expression.
Depression to Expression.
Good.
stuff.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, I like that title.
Quick question: do you play any instruments?
Yes, I actually do play instruments. I play bass guitar, piano, a little bit of the trumpet. I started learning them by ear.
Right.
I only went to lessons for piano for a little bit, but then I dropped out because like reading wasn't really my thing.
So you're really gifted then. So anyway, you know what we're going to do? Listen, we're looking forward to hear Lazz Da Kid perform. Thanks
Absolutely.
to George
Yeah.
Fiala for being on. Guys, thanks to my panel, Justin Finney, for sitting in.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with Lazz Da Kid.
She's a baddie and she knows it, yeah. She's just waiting to be chosen, yeah. Mama don't raise no home, oh no, no. Mama don't raise no home, oh no, no. She's a baddie and she knows it, yeah. She's just waiting to be chosen, yeah. Mama don't raise no home, oh no, no, no. Mama don't raise no home, oh no, no, no. Yeah. Mama don't raise no home, oh no, no, no. Mama don't raise no home, oh no, 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 no. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she got that look in her eye, but she sure she don't want a guy, 'cause all of these brothers are slime, and she's done with wasting the time. Oh, I told her come through, come and kick it with a real guy. We can do anything you like. I just wanna see you for the night. Yeah, we can chat a little bit. Let me get in your life. Yeah, start holding hands. You can kiss me if you like. That to make you drip while I'm squeezing on your thighs. Show you that I ain't like these other guys. I'm trying to keep you in my life. Since day one, I've been looking for a wife. Trying to show my mama I can find someone nice. She don't like my ex, but she gon' like what's next. She already stressed, she don't need more stress. I ain't never met someone like you. We bring it to my mama and can hang with the crew. Shawty, what it do? If you feeling naughty and you wanna party, maybe I should bring you to the room. Zoom, zoom. You speeding through all of the texts that I send you. You reading, but you ain't replying. You say that you busy and you wanna see me, but books got you so occupied. That's the ish that I like. But you say I don't get it, maybe we should just forget it. Maybe this wasn't right. I guess I ain't your type. Oh, she's a baddie and she knows it. She just waiting to be chosen. She's a 10 like she the Rosen. Her heart is cold, she feeling frozen. Her heart is pure, cause like golden. She isn't perfect, but she worth it. Your mama didn't raise no home. Oh no, 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 oh. Yeah.